I was 24, and I genuinely believed my life was finally moving in a clear direction. I worked at a small logistics company on the edge of town, rented an apartment with my girlfriend Emily, and we had been together for almost 3 years. It wasn't perfect, but it felt stable. And for me, stability mattered. I've always been the kind of guy who finds comfort in routines. The same coffee every morning, the same route to work, predictable weekends planned days in advance. Emily knew that about me. She used to smile and say that being with me felt safe, like nothing unexpected could ever happen. At the time, I took that as a compliment. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. My shift had been cut short because a shipment was delayed, and I decided to surprise her. I remember standing in the hallway outside our apartment, keys in my hand, already imagining the look on her face when she saw me. Maybe we'd order takeout. Maybe we'd just sit on the couch and talk about nothing important. The apartment door wasn't locked. That was the first thing that felt off. Emily was usually obsessive about locking it, especially when she knew I'd be home late. I pushed the door open quietly, stepping inside. The lights were dim, and the TV was on low volume. At first, I thought she might be asleep. Then I heard laughter. It wasn't hers alone. I froze, my jacket still half on, my heart immediately picking up speed. The laughter came from our bedroom. I remember telling myself not to jump to conclusions, that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe a friend was over. Maybe I was overthinking it. But deep down, I already knew. As I walked down the hallway, every step felt heavier than the last. The door to the bedroom was slightly open. I didn't push it right away. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the crack, listening, whispering, soft, intimate. The kind of quiet voices people use when they don't want to be overheard. When I finally opened the door, the world I thought I understood collapsed in on itself. Emily was on the bed. She wasn't alone. I won't describe the scene in detail. I don't need to. The look on her face when she saw me said everything. Shock first, then guilt, then something worse, resignation, like a part of her had already accepted that this moment was inevitable. I don't remember raising my voice. I don't remember saying anything dramatic. I just asked one question, my voice calm in a way that scared even me. How long? She started crying immediately. The other guy scrambled for his clothes, mumbling apologies that meant nothing to me. I told him to leave. He didn't argue. When the door closed behind him, the silence was unbearable. Emily tried to explain. She said it just happened. She said she'd been feeling distant, restless, unsure of what she wanted. She said I was too predictable. That word stayed with me. Predictable. I packed a bag that night and left the apartment without knowing where I was going. All I knew was that the life I thought I had, the future I'd planned so carefully, was gone. And as I sat alone in my car, staring at the dark street outside, I had no idea that this betrayal was only the beginning of a much stranger, more complicated chapter of my life. I slept in my car that night, parked behind a closed grocery store a few blocks away. I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured things out. But the truth was, I didn't want to call anyone. I didn't want the pity, the questions, or the inevitable. I always thought something was off about her. The next morning, my phone was full of messages from Emily. Missed calls. Long texts that started with apologies and ended with confusion. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. Every time I thought about typing something back, my chest tightened and my thoughts spiraled. I went to work anyway. Routine felt like the only thing keeping me upright. I sat at my desk, stared at my screen, and pretended I could focus. Around noon, my manager asked if I was okay. Apparently, I'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for almost an hour. I told him I was just tired. He nodded, not pushing further. That evening, I realized I couldn't keep sleeping in my car. I needed a place to stay, even if it was just for a few days. The only person I felt remotely comfortable calling was Mark, a coworker I'd known for about a year. We weren't close friends, but he'd mentioned once that his mother rented out a spare room. When I called, he didn't hesitate. Yeah, man, you can stay there for a bit. She's pretty chill. Just normal house rules. Normal sounded good. Safe. The house was on the quieter side of town, older but well kept, with a wide front porch and a yard that looked like someone actually cared about it. Mark wasn't home when I arrived, but his mother was. Her name was Laura. She opened the door with a polite smile that softened immediately when she saw my face. I must have looked worse than I felt. She didn't ask questions right away. She just stepped aside and told me to come in. The house smelled like coffee and something warm, cinnamon, maybe. She showed me the spare room, already made up with clean sheets and a folded blanket at the foot of the bed. It wasn't fancy, but it felt more welcoming than anywhere I'd been since leaving my apartment. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," she said. "Just don't feel like you have to hide in that room all the time." Laura was in her early 40s, maybe mid-40s. Calm, composed, the kind of person who spoke carefully, like she actually meant what she said. There was no awkwardness, no forced small talk. Over the next few days, I kept to myself. I went to work, came home, ate quietly, and retreated to the spare room. Laura never pushed, but she was always there in subtle ways. An extra plate of food left out, a casual check-in, a quiet good night when she passed my door. One evening, she asked if I wanted to sit on the porch with her, just to talk. I almost said no, but something about her tone, gentle, without expectation, made it hard to refuse. We sat outside as the sun dipped below the trees, the air cooling just enough to be comfortable. She didn't ask what happened. She just asked how I was holding up. And for the first time since that night, I felt the weight in my chest ease, just a little. I didn't plan to tell Laura anything that night. My intention was to keep it vague, say I was stressed, maybe blame work. But something about the quiet of the porch, the rhythmic creak of the wooden boards beneath us, made pretending feel pointless. I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me. I said finally, staring at the darkening sky instead of her face. Laura didn't react the way most people do. No sharp inhale, no immediate sympathy speech. She just nodded slowly, like she was letting the words settle. "That kind of betrayal has a way of knocking the ground out from under you," she said after a moment. "Especially when you don't see it coming." I laughed once, short and hollow. That's the worst part. I thought I knew her. We sat in silence again. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt respectful, like she wasn't rushing me through my own feelings. Over the next week, those porch conversations became a routine. Not every night, but often enough. Sometimes we talked about my situation. Other times, about nothing important at all. Movies, the town, how quiet things got after 10 p.m. Laura had lived there most of her life. She knew everyone, or at least everyone's history. She also had her own story, though she shared it in pieces. A marriage that ended years ago. A husband who'd chosen comfort over honesty. A long stretch of learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. I noticed things about her slowly. The way she listened without interrupting. The way she smiled with just one side of her mouth when something amused her. The calm confidence she carried, like she didn't need to prove herself to anyone anymore. One evening, Emily showed up at my work. I saw her before she saw me. My stomach dropped instantly. She looked nervous, scanning the room like she was afraid I'd disappear if she blinked. She told me she was sorry, that it just happened, that she'd been confused, lonely, unsure about us. Every excuse sounded rehearsed. I realized, standing there, that I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. That night, I told Laura about it, about how I felt empty instead of hurt. "That's usually the moment people mistake for healing," she said gently. "But it's really just the pause before you decide who you're going to be next." Her words stayed with me. Around that time, Emily started posting online. Pictures, subtle captions, inside jokes I didn't recognize anymore. It felt deliberate, like she wanted me to see how fine she was without me. Laura noticed my mood shift before I said anything. She always did. "You don't owe her silence," she said one night. "But you also don't owe her a reaction." I asked her how she learned that. She smiled, faint but knowing. "By reacting for far too long." That was the night I realized something uncomfortable but undeniable. I looked forward to these conversations more than anything else in my day. Not in a dramatic way. Not like a sudden spark. More like a slow warmth that crept in when I wasn't paying attention. I told myself it was temporary. That I was just vulnerable. That she was just kind. But even then, a quiet part of me knew this wasn't just kindness. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where everything suddenly felt different. It was gradual, small enough that I could pretend it wasn't happening if I wanted to. It started with comfort. Real comfort. The kind that doesn't demand anything in return. I'd come home from work, and Laura would already know if it had been a bad day. Not because I told her, but because she paid attention. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, standing on a chair, trying to reach a box on the top shelf. Instinctively, I stepped in and grabbed it for her. Our hands brushed, just for a second. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. She noticed it too. I could tell by the way she paused, then smiled, soft, almost surprised. "Thank you," she said. After that, there was a brief, awkward distance between us. Conversations became a little more careful. Less late-night porch time. More polite space. It felt like we were both acknowledging something without naming it. Meanwhile, Emily didn't stop. She started texting again, longer messages now, reminding me of our history, of trips we'd planned, of the version of us that existed before everything cracked. I showed one of the messages to Laura. Not for advice, exactly. More like I needed someone to witness it with me. She read it quietly, then handed the phone back. "She's afraid you're moving on," Laura said. "Not because she wants you back, but because she doesn't want to lose the power of being wanted." That hit harder than I expected. The next weekend, the town held its annual fall festival. Mark convinced me to go, insisting it would get me out of my head. Laura was already planning to attend. I almost stayed home, but I went. The festival was small-town chaos. Food trucks, string lights, kids running around with sticky fingers, local bands trying a little too hard. I lost track of Mark within 10 minutes. Laura found me near the cider stand. She was wearing a dark green jacket, her hair pulled back loosely. She looked different, not trying to impress anyone, just comfortable in her skin. We walked together, shoulder to shoulder. People greeted her as we passed. She introduced me casually, no labels, just my name. At one point, a slow song started playing from the stage. Couples gathered near the lights, swaying more than dancing. I didn't think anything of it until Laura stopped walking. "Do you want to?" she asked, nodding toward the crowd. I hesitated. The age difference was suddenly loud in my head. The looks, the assumptions, everything I'd been telling myself not to think about. She noticed. Of course she did. "It's okay to say no," she added. But I didn't want to. We didn't dance closely. Not at first. Just a respectful distance, moving in time with the music. But as the song went on, that space narrowed. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Mine settled at her waist. It felt natural. Not rushed. Not wrong. Across the crowd, I saw Emily. She wasn't alone. She saw me too. Her expression shifted. Confusion first, then something sharper. Laura didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to react. That night, lying in the spare room, I realized something important. Whatever was happening between Laura and me, it wasn't about revenge. But Emily was about to make it that way. Emily didn't wait long after the festival. The next morning, she posted a photo on social media, her and the guy she'd cheated with, smiling too hard, captioned with something about choosing happiness. It felt intentional, like a response. I didn't react. At least, not publicly. But the image followed me all day, sitting heavy in the back of my mind. It wasn't jealousy anymore. It was the quiet irritation of realizing someone was still trying to control the narrative of your life. Laura noticed the shift in me that evening. I hadn't said anything, but I was quieter than usual, less present. "You don't have to protect me from your thoughts," she said gently while we were cleaning up after dinner. I handed her my phone. She looked at the photo, then back at me. No judgment, no commentary, just a slow exhale. "She's trying to provoke you," Laura said. "People do that when they're afraid of becoming irrelevant." "So what do I do?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "You live well, and you don't hide while doing it." That was the first time the word revenge crossed my mind, not as something loud or cruel, but as something quiet and undeniable. Not destruction, visibility. A few days later, Laura asked if I wanted to help her with something. She'd been meaning to update her old bookstore cafe. Small place she owned downtown. Half shop, half coffee spot that mostly served locals and passing tourists. I spent the weekend repainting shelves, fixing a flickering light, reorganizing displays. We worked side by side, music playing softly in the background. It felt domestic, comfortable in a way I wasn't prepared for. At one point, she brushed paint off my cheek with her thumb. The moment lingered longer than necessary. Neither of us pulled away. "I need to say something," she said quietly. My heart picked up. "This can't be a reaction to your breakup," she continued. "And it can't be about proving anything to anyone else." "I know," I said, and I meant it. She studied my face for a long second, like she was checking for cracks. Then she nodded. That night, she invited me to stay up late after Mark had gone out. We sat on the couch, closer than before. The conversation drifted from past mistakes to future fears. From what we wanted to what we were afraid to admit wanting. When she leaned in to kiss me, it was slow, deliberate, like she was giving me every chance to stop it. I didn't. The kiss wasn't rushed or desperate. It was controlled, warm, charged in a way that felt earned, not impulsive. When we finally pulled back, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The change between us was immediate but subtle. We didn't announce anything. We didn't cross obvious lines in public. But we stopped pretending there was nothing there. And then Emily walked into the cafe. She froze when she saw us. Me behind the counter, Laura beside me, her hand resting casually on my arm. For the first time since everything fell apart, I wasn't the one caught off guard. Emily forced a smile. I didn't know you worked here. I don't, I said calmly. I help. Laura met her gaze evenly. Can I get you something? Emily hesitated, then shook her head and left without ordering. Laura didn't say anything until the door closed behind her. That, she said softly, is what choosing yourself looks like. After Emily left the cafe, something settled into place inside me. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just clarity. I hadn't planned that moment, and that's what made it powerful. It wasn't staged or forced. It was simply the result of choices made quietly, over time. Laura and I talked about it later that night. Not about Emily specifically, but about boundaries. About what we were doing and why. She was careful, always careful. I don't want to be a chapter you use to get over someone else, she said. You're not. I replied without hesitation. You're the chapter that started after. She didn't smile at that. She studied me instead, like she was weighing the words. Then she nodded once. We didn't rush things. That was her rule, and I respected it. We spent more time together, but we kept the rhythm steady. Dinners at home. Long walks through quiet streets. Evenings at the cafe after closing, talking while she counted the register and wiped down tables. People noticed. In a small town, they always do. The look started first. Curious. Measuring. Some approving, some less so. A few comments followed, mostly indirect. Laura handled them with grace. I was still learning how. One afternoon, Mark pulled me aside at work. So you and my mom? He asked, not accusing, just surprised. I nodded. Yeah. He thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. As long as you're good to each other. That was it. No lecture. No warning. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until it was over. Emily, on the other hand, didn't let it go. She started showing up places she knew I'd be. Asking mutual friends questions. Spreading half-truths wrapped in concern. She's acting like she's worried about you, Laura said one night, after someone mentioned Emily had been asking how you were. I think she's worried about herself, I replied. Laura smiled at that. A small, proud smile. The turning point came when Emily sent me a message I didn't expect. Not an apology. Not anger. An invitation. She wanted to meet. Just to talk, she said. I showed it to Laura. You don't have to, she said immediately. I know, I replied. But I think I should. We agreed on one thing. Honesty. No hiding. No pretending. I met Emily at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Neutral ground. She looked different, more put together than usual, like she was trying to reclaim a version of herself. She asked about Laura almost immediately. How it happened. What it meant. Whether it was serious. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I just told her the truth. I was happy. Not because of revenge. Not because of comparison. Because I was finally being honest with myself. She didn't take it well. Accused me of moving on too fast. Of trying to hurt her. That's the thing, I said calmly. I'm not thinking about you anymore. Her silence after that was loud. When I got back, Laura was waiting on the porch. She didn't ask questions. She just opened her arms. I realized then that whatever Emily thought she was fighting for, she'd already lost it long before she cheated. And whatever Laura and I were building, it was stronger because it wasn't built out of spite, but intention. After that meeting, Emily faded from my daily thoughts faster than I expected. Not because she stopped existing, but because she stopped mattering. There's a difference. One hurts. The other frees you. Laura and I settled into something that felt real in the quietest ways. Sunday mornings with coffee before the town woke up. Evenings where we didn't need background noise to fill the space. She never treated me like I was younger, and I never tried to pretend I was older. There was a mutual understanding that respect mattered more than appearances. Still, the town had opinions. They always do. A woman Laura had known for years made an offhand comment at the cafe about cradle robbing. Another joked about midlife crises. Laura laughed them off, but I could see the weight it added, even when she pretended it didn't. One night, I asked her if it bothered her. "It's not the comments," she said. "It's the assumption that I must be compensating for something." "And are you?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. "No, I'm choosing something." That distinction mattered. Around that time, the cafe started doing better than it had in years. New customers, better reviews. People stayed longer. Laura said it was probably just timing, but I noticed how often people watched us. Not critically, but curiously. Like they were trying to understand something they hadn't expected. Emily tried once more. This time indirectly. A mutual friend warned me she'd been telling people I'd been manipulated. That Laura had taken advantage of me while I was vulnerable. I was angry. Real anger. Sharp and sudden. Not for myself, but for Laura. "She's rewriting the story," I told her. Laura sighed. "People always do when they don't like the ending. But this could hurt you," I said. She reached for my hand. "Only if I let it." That was when I realized how much stronger she was than anyone gave her credit for. And how much stronger I'd become by standing beside her instead of behind someone else. The final twist came unexpectedly. Emily's new relationship fell apart publicly. Arguments spilled online. Deleted posts. Subtle blame games. The town noticed. The same people who'd whispered about me and Laura now whispered about her. She showed up at the cafe again one afternoon. This time alone. Quieter. Smaller somehow. Laura handled it. Calm. Professional. Kind without being inviting. Emily glanced at me once before leaving. There was no anger in her eyes. Just regret. And something else, recognition. That was the last time I saw her. That night, Laura and I sat on the porch like we had in the beginning. Same chairs. Same creaking boards. Different people. "You know," she said softly, "this isn't revenge anymore." I nodded. "It hasn't been for a while. It's just a life," she continued. "One we chose." I looked at her then. Not as the woman who helped me through betrayal, not as the older woman people like to label her as, but as my partner. Someone who met me where I was and challenged me to grow. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was starting over. I felt like I was finally starting right. With Emily gone for good, the town slowly recalibrated. Small places always do. A new story replaces the old one, and curiosity shifts direction. Laura and I didn't announce anything, but we also stopped hiding. We walked together downtown. We closed the cafe together at night. We lived like people who had nothing left to explain. That didn't mean everything was easy. Real relationships never are. The age difference surfaced in unexpected ways. I was thinking about career moves, restlessness, the urge to prove myself. Laura was more settled, more deliberate. She didn't rush decisions, and sometimes that frustrated me. One night, we argued. Not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. I wanted to take a job opportunity in a nearby city, something bigger, faster. She worried about the distance, about what transition really meant. "I don't want to hold you back," she said. "And I don't want to outgrow us," I replied. The words hung between us, heavier than I intended. She didn't get defensive. She never did. Instead, she asked the question that mattered. "Is this something you want for you, or something you want to prove?" I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. That night, I lay awake realizing something important. Loving someone like Laura meant being forced to confront myself. There was no chaos to hide in, no drama to distract from the truth, just choices. A few days later, I turned down the job. Not because she asked me to, she didn't, but because I realized I wasn't running towards something. I was running away from who I used to be. When I told her, she didn't celebrate. She just nodded. "That was your decision," she said. "And that's what matters." In return, she did something unexpected. She handed me a set of keys. "The cafe," she explained. "I trust you." It wasn't symbolic. It was practical. And somehow, that made it mean more. Together, we made small changes. New events. Open mic nights. Story readings. The cafe became a place where people lingered, not because of us, but because of the atmosphere we built. I started writing again. Something I'd stopped doing years ago. Short pieces. Reflections. Fragments of the life I was living. Laura was the first person I let read them. "You don't write like someone trying to be heard," she told me. "You write like someone who finally is." One evening, Mark joined us for dinner. He watched us quietly for a while before speaking. "You're different," he said to me. "Good different or weird different?" I asked. He smirked. "Grounded different." Later that night, Laura admitted something she'd been holding back. I was afraid, she said. Not of you. Of how right this feels. I understood that fear. Because I felt it too. Outside, the town settled into its familiar silence. Inside, we sat close, not chasing the future, not haunted by the past, just present. And I realized then, the real revenge wasn't being seen. It was becoming someone worth seeing. Winter arrived quietly that year. No dramatic storms, just a steady cooling that settled into the bones of the town. The cafe became warmer, more intimate. Candles on tables. Coats hung near the door. Conversations slowed, deepened. Laura and I learned each other in this season. Not the honeymoon version, but the honest one. How we handled stress, silence, disagreement. She liked early mornings. I came alive late at night. She processed things internally. I talked them out. Instead of clashing, we adjusted. Not perfectly, intentionally. One evening, Laura received a letter she hadn't been expecting. From her ex-husband. Short, polite, too late. He'd heard about the cafe, about her new life. He wanted to meet. Closure, he called it. She showed me the letter without drama. I don't want him back, she said. But I don't want unresolved ghosts either. I didn't feel threatened. That surprised me. The old version of me would've. Instead, I trusted her. And more importantly, I trusted us. They met. I stayed home. Not because she asked me to, but because it felt right. When she came back, she looked lighter. Tired, but lighter. He apologized, she said. In his way. And it didn't change anything. That night, we talked about permanence. Not marriage. Not labels. Just direction. I don't need promises, she said. I need honesty about where this is going. I thought about that for a long time. I don't know exactly where, I said finally. But I know who I want to walk with. She smiled. Not big. Real. Around that time, I ran into Emily one last time, unexpectedly, at a gas station just outside town. She looked different again. Quieter. Worn in a way that wasn't physical. We exchanged polite nods. Nothing more. No words. No closure speech. And that was enough. Driving away, I felt no pull to look back. That surprised me most of all. The town started treating Laura and me like a constant instead of a curiosity. We became background. Familiar. And there's something comforting about that. One snowy evening, the power went out across half the town. The cafe closed early. We lit candles at home, wrapped ourselves in blankets, and talked until the world outside disappeared. Laura rested her head on my shoulder. You know, she said softly, this wasn't the life I planned. I waited. But it's the one that fits, she finished. I thought about the version of myself from a year earlier. Angry, blindsided, convinced betrayal had defined me. I barely recognized him now. Betrayal had broken something open. Not just trust, but possibility. I realized then that growth doesn't always come from ambition or success. Sometimes it comes from surviving something honestly, without hardening. Outside, snow fell quietly. Inside, we stayed warm. Not because we were hiding from the cold, but because we'd learned how to face things together. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something to chase or fear. It felt like something we were already building, one deliberate choice at a time. Spring came softly to our small town, carrying longer days and warmer evenings. The cafe thrived in ways I hadn't expected. Locals came for the coffee, but stayed for the atmosphere we'd created. Our presence, steady but unobtrusive, the kind of energy that made people linger without realizing why. Laura and I had settled into a rhythm, comfortable but alive. There were no dramatic gestures, no fireworks of passion, just the quiet understanding that comes from shared history and chosen intimacy. We had learned each other's rhythms, fears, and unspoken thoughts. Our connection wasn't loud. It was patient, growing steadily beneath the surface. Emily was no longer a shadow over my life. I heard of her occasionally through mutual acquaintances, but it didn't matter. She had become part of a past that had no hold over me anymore. I had forgiven, not for her sake, but for mine. The release was unexpected, like waking from a dream and realizing the nightmare had ended. One afternoon, Laura invited me to a small community event at the park. I had initially hesitated, expecting small-town judgment, gossip, or unwanted attention. But she simply took my hand and smiled. Let's go, she said. It's ours, not theirs. The day was unremarkable in the grand scheme. Children running, neighbors chatting, dogs barking, but there was a warmth in walking beside her. People glanced at us, whispering perhaps, but for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't proving anything to anyone. I was present. I was part of something real. Later, that evening, we returned to the cafe, now empty and quiet. We sat on the back porch, where it all had started, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. The air was soft with spring scents, and the world beyond our little sanctuary felt far away. "You've changed," Laura said finally. "I had to," I admitted. "I didn't know how to be me otherwise." She smiled, resting her head against my shoulder. "And now?" "Now, I feel like I can be anyone," I said. "Anyone who chooses honesty over fear. Anyone who faces life without letting the past dictate the present." She kissed my temple softly, a quiet affirmation. "That's who I see too." We stayed there long after the sun disappeared, wrapped in blankets and warmth. It wasn't about revenge anymore, or proof, or reclaiming lost pride. It was about connection. About choosing each day to grow together, to nurture trust, and to embrace love on our own terms. I thought about the year that had passed, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the nights of uncertainty, and the slow, steady climb towards something real. The pain had been necessary. It had reshaped me, redefined my understanding of loyalty, desire, and self-worth. As the stars emerged above the quiet town, I realized the truth I had been circling all along. Happiness isn't about erasing the past or winning battles. It's about building something meaningful after everything falls apart. Laura squeezed my hand, and I returned the gesture. No words were needed. In that moment, I understood the power of trust, patience, and choosing the right person over the right timing. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And sometimes, that was more than enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely whole. The end.